This episode is brought to you by CBS. DMV is a brand new workplace comedy turning misery into magic and chaos into comedy. Starring Harriet Dyer and Tim Meadows, DMV is here to serve you laughs. Watch October 13th at 8:30, 7:30 Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana makes car selling fast and easy from start to finish. Enter your license plate or VIN and get a real offer in seconds, down to the penny. If you accept, Carvana will come pick up your car from your driveway. Or you can drop it off at one of our car vending machines. Either way, you get paid instantly. It's fast, transparent, and 100% online. Car selling that saves your time. That's Carvana.
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
EVO.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 154, The Back Staircase. The colonial-style home, well, mansion really, was situated on more than 3 beautifully manicured acres and evoked Rockwellian themes. From the vantage point of the wrought iron black gate, you could catch a glimpse of the stately white 9,000-square-foot residence, with cross-paned windows that were dressed with black shutters. The front facade featured red brick accents that matched no less than 3 brick chimneys, thrust from strategic points within the home, giving the impression that, truly, when it came to that place, home was where the hearth is. On this estate in Durham, North Carolina, in the neighborhood of Forest Hills. Now, sometimes people wonder as they pass spectacular homes, like the mansion in Forest Hills, and wonder, what did the people who live there do to be able to afford such splendor? And the Petersons, who lived there, were exactly what you might expect. A big, bustling, blended family. Michael and Kathleen moved their 5 kids into that home in the 1990s. And on any given day, if you peered into one of the many windows, you might have seen Michael, the father and best-selling author, behind his computer with a pipe clenched between his teeth as he furiously typed. So, a bit about Michael. He was from Nashville, Tennessee. He graduated from Duke University, enlisted in the Marines in 1968, and served in the Vietnam War. Later in life, he became a novelist and built a successful career writing about his military experiences in Vietnam. Michael's wife, Kathleen, earned her master's degree in engineering from Duke. She went on to be a successful telecom executive. Their courtship was the stuff of second chances and a romantic love story. Michael was divorced and raising his 4 kids, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Kathleen, recently separated, lived in the same neighborhood as Michael as his kids. She was raising her young daughter. Kathleen and Michael only met after their daughters became playmates. And it was through the girls' many play dates that they started talking, and one thing led to another. In 1989, Michael and his kids moved in with Kathleen and her daughter. Then later, when Michael got a hefty advance on one of his novels, the couple were able to purchase their dream home on Cedar Street, that colonial mansion where the couple was later married in 1997. The thing is, Michael and Kathleen were not only in love, but they became quite the power couple in Durham. Kathleen loved to decorate their home, celebrating every occasion. She also was a fabulous cook, and the couple hosted amazing parties at their spectacular home, and then together they also attended charity events and other high society functions. Michael could be a big talker. He loved to pontificate and was often at the center of every party. But his contrarian attitude and free-flowing opinions were on display in his political column, which rubbed some people the wrong way, especially his articles that were critical of the police. But it was when Michael ran for mayor of Durham in 1999 that his reputation took a bit of a hit. Michael's campaign focused on public safety and community engagement. However, during his campaign, Michael was publicly called out. He was accused of lying about his military record. Michael had repeatedly claimed that he'd been awarded 2 Purple Hearts in Vietnam. According to his military records, Michael hadn't earned a Purple Heart, let alone 2. A Purple Heart is a medal given to soldiers injured or killed in combat. Michael admitted that he'd lied, and he ultimately lost the election. And being outed for stolen valor was an absolute blow to the couple's social standing in Durham. But his lie about the Purple Hearts didn't really make sense in the first place. Michael Peterson had been awarded 2 high combat honors, the Silver Star and the Bronze Star with Valor. Why he chose to embellish his combat experience was confounding. Through it all, Kathleen stood by Michael. And so did their kids. Kathleen was a busy executive, and she relished being a mom to their big family. Family was what was most important to the Petersons. Even by 2001, when all 5 kids were grown, Michael was in his mid-50s and Kathleen was 48, and they still weren't quite yet empty nesters. Michael's sons still lived with them. The 3 girls were away at college, and that December, Kathleen and Michael were busy preparing the house for another bustling Christmas season. Kathleen just loved celebrating the special days and moments with family and friends. In fact, on that Sunday, December 9th, she'd spent the afternoon putting up Christmas decorations. A festive red-ribboned holiday wreath decorated the door, and she'd placed the reindeer figures just so in the front yard. She and Michael spent the evening watching a movie, drinking wine, and enjoying each other's company. Later on, the couple went outside into the winter's night to sit poolside in deck chairs, enjoying the chilly fresh air and starry sky. Sometime around 11 or 12 o'clock, Kathleen told Michael she had an early Monday morning conference, so she went up to bed. As for Michael, who lived the life of a writer, he didn't have an early morning call, so he stayed behind at the pool. According to Michael, he must have fallen asleep outside because he recalled groggily waking up and then making his way into the house, and it was after 2 a.m. But his system would be shocked into consciousness when he saw his wife, Kathleen, splayed out at the bottom of the back staircase, covered in blood. He didn't even have time to think about what happened when he made the frantic call at 2:40 that morning to 911, blurting out that he just found his wife barely breathing, bloody and unconscious at the bottom of the stairwell.
911, where's your emergency? Cedar Street, please. What's wrong? My wife's had an accident. She's still breathing. What kind of accident? Still on the stairs. She's still breathing. Please come. Is she conscious? What? Is she conscious? No, she's not conscious. Please. How many stairs did you fall down? How many stairs? Stairs. How many stairs? Calm down, sir. Calm down. No, 15, 20, I don't know. Please, get somebody here right away, please. Okay, somebody's dispatching the ambulance while I ask you questions. It's a force field, okay? Please! Sir, somebody else is dispatching the ambulance. Okay, is she awake now? Hello?
Michael had disconnected the call with the operator, but he called back a few minutes later, telling the dispatcher that his wife had stopped breathing and that they needed to hurry. Then he hung up again. So Michael's first 911 call was placed at 2:42 a.m., and the paramedics arrived in less than 10 minutes, where they found a weeping Michael Peterson on the floor, cradling his wife's lifeless body at the foot of the staircase. Michael had told the 911 operator during that first call that Kathleen was still breathing. When the paramedic checked Kathleen's pupils at 2:50, he noted that they were dilated, which indicated to him that a substantial time period had elapsed without her breathing. Another thing the paramedic noted was that he'd been to 30 or 40 incidents where someone had fallen, and the worst injury he'd come across was a broken neck. That he'd never seen wounding to the back of the head like what Kathleen had suffered. Meanwhile, when investigators arrived at the scene, Michael explained their evening together. How it had ended with him falling asleep outside, and that when he came into the house, he found Kathleen's body at the foot of the staircase, and that she must have fallen down the stairs. That it was a horrible accident, and he explained how they'd been drinking that night, and that his wife had also been recently taking painkillers because of an injury. Now, I need to describe this particular staircase. Now, I mentioned that the Petersons had a colonial-style mansion. It was built in 1940. And it did have a sprawling grand staircase that you might be imagining right now. But Kathleen's body wasn't at the bottom of those stairs, but rather at the back of the house, which was a walled-in, narrow, steep, and dimly lit staircase. But one thing was clear as day. One paramedic would later describe that staircase scene as having an enormous amount of blood. Blood coated and sprayed the walls inside the staircase. And a lot of it was dry. And the blood underneath Kathleen's head had coagulated and clotted, which was an indication that it wasn't fresh. There was also dried blood on the stairs and stairwell that appeared as if it had been wiped away. After the medical examiner arrived at the scene, he looked at the stairs and made a cursory examination of the back of Kathleen's head and determined that a fall down those back stairs was possible based on her lacerations. But others were skeptical. The amount of blood on the walls of that staircase and on the stairs was galling. Right away, investigators were suspicious, especially when they noticed a smear of blood on the front door and droplets on the outside walkway. There was also a blood stain on a kitchen cabinet and a drop of blood on the counter. If Kathleen had fallen down the stairwell, how did droplets of her blood land in these places? And the wine glasses and wine bottle Michael had pointed out to investigators, showing the couple had tied one on that night, when they were dusted for prints, none were found. And the blood on Michael's clothing appeared dry. His shirt was partially blood-soaked with spatter spots and speckles of blood. Later, there was an observation that Michael had blood spatter on his sneakers and inside the right leg of his shorts. Because there was just so much blood and blood spatter, which could indicate that Kathleen hadn't accidentally slipped and fallen, but had been hit in the head with a blunt object, causing blood to spray. Investigators started thinking this could be a homicide and not an accidental death, so they applied for a warrant to search the house. Not only were they questioning Michael's story, but all that dried blood, they wondered if it was an indication that Michael had delayed calling 911 because he needed time to stage the crime scene. It was clear from the beginning that police were suspicious of Kathleen's death, and Michael, the last person to have seen Kathleen alive, was their one and only suspect. Michael felt their suspicions, especially as he watched their growing investigation, saw officers combing the property, beating down bushes outside, like they were looking for something, possibly a murder weapon. He told them he was innocent, that the only explanation he could think of when he found his wife was that she had slipped and fallen and it was a terrible accident. But in his mind, he believed this wasn't about Kathleen at all. This was about payback for those articles he'd written about police incompetence. Meanwhile, in the days following Kathleen's death, investigators looked into Michael and Kathleen's lives together. According to family friends, Michael and Kathleen appeared to have the perfect relationship. But after digging into their finances, some cracks emerged within their, quote, perfect relationship. Investigators learned that Kathleen was under a tremendous amount of stress. She was worried about potential layoffs that were coming at her company and that she thought there was a chance she could lose her job. And the truth was, Michael hadn't sold a book, which meant no big advances. The couple had 3 kids in college, they'd racked up a lot of credit card debt, and that beautiful old house had become a money pit. And it was Kathleen, not Michael, who bore the brunt of all that financial stress. The weight of it was on Kathleen's shoulders. The fact that the couple was living beyond their means wasn't proof that Michael had murdered Kathleen. However, when a blood pattern expert who had analyzed the blood spatter at the crime scene told investigators that he suspected, based on the forensic evidence collected at the staircase crime scene, he believed that Kathleen had been murdered by her husband, Michael Peterson. And a few weeks after Kathleen's death, Michael was charged with her first-degree murder. Now, after his indictment, a French documentary filmmaker got permission from Michael to basically embed themselves at the mansion where he was living with his kids after he made bail, which meant that this documentary they were filming had unprecedented access to Michael, his kids, and his attorneys as Michael prepped for trial. Now, Michael had unequivocally proclaimed he was not guilty of murdering Kathleen, a position that would become very complicated to defend as the months leading up to his trial rolled on. The first hit to his reputation was when the medical examiner released the findings of Kathleen's autopsy. 2 months after Michael was arrested, news spread like wildfire that the ME had concluded that Kathleen had died as a result of homicidal assault. 7 deep and long lacerations were exposed at the top and back of her head, caused by what was believed to have been repeated blows from an unknown light weapon. And Kathleen's toxicology report showed that she only had a little alcohol in her system. The case became a national and international media frenzy after it was revealed that not only had Michael Peterson let Kathleen down financially, and also with the loss of their reputation after he had to admit that he'd been lying about the Purple Hearts, but also, as you might already be thinking, it's a tale as old as time that Michael had been unfaithful to Kathleen, but with a twist no one saw coming. Remember how investigators had acquired that search warrant for their mansion? Well, when they took a look at Michael's computer, they found more than 2,000 explicit images of men, and also email correspondence between Michael and a male escort, detailing how they'd planned to meet up in person to have sex. It was also revealed that if Kathleen died, Michael would inherit $1.5 million. The case would get even more bizarre after investigators got a tip from someone who had quite a story to tell. Now, I told you that Michael met Kathleen when he was raising his 4 kids on his own, 2 sons and 2 daughters. But the 2 girls weren't his biological children. In the early 1980s, Michael was living in Germany with his first wife, Patty. Patty and Michael had become good friends with their neighbor, Elizabeth Ratliff, who was a teacher and the mother of 2 little girls. In November of 1985, Elizabeth, or Liz, and her girls went to the Petersons' home for dinner. Afterward, Michael drove Liz and her kids home and went inside to help her put the girls to bed. Then, according to Michael, he drove home. The next morning, Michael would say that he was awoken by Liz's nanny, who came running over and told him that when she arrived that morning to watch the girls at Liz's home, she'd found the mother of 2 dead at the bottom of the staircase at her condominium. Durham police looked into this story and confirmed that not only was it true, but that Michael had told German police who investigated Liz's death that she suffered from a blood disorder and most likely had an aneurysm after slipping and falling down the stairs. An autopsy would determine that Liz's cause of death was attributed to a brain hemorrhage, and her manner of death, as a result, was ruled as natural causes. The thing is, tragically, Liz's husband, the girl's father, had died unexpectedly. And after that, Liz had updated her will that in the event of her death, that custody of her little girls would go to Michael and Patty. Then, a couple of years after Liz's death, Michael and his first wife, Patty, got a divorce, and he moved back to the States with the girls and his sons, where he later met and married Kathleen. Given the details of Kathleen's death, the way Liz died seemed even more suspicious. 2 women who died at the foot of staircases, and the last person to be with each of them was Michael Peterson? Before Michael's trial began, Elizabeth's embalmed body was exhumed. During a second autopsy, the ME performed a more thorough investigation, specifically looking at the injuries Liz had sustained at the back of her head, and it was eerie. She had the exact number of deep lacerations, 7, found on Kathleen's head. Ultimately, Elizabeth's cause of death was overturned from natural causes to homicide. And in the summer of 2003, Michael Peterson's trial began. The prosecution's theory was this. The night Kathleen died, she'd went into Michael's office and saw the explicit emails her husband had sent to the male escort, whose username was Soldier Top Brad. The prosecution theorized that Kathleen confronted Michael that night over his secret life and told him she wanted a divorce. That Michael had murdered Kathleen for her $1.5 million life insurance policy, and that he didn't want the fact that he was a bisexual man being exposed. On the stand, Soldier Top Brad testified.
What types of services did you perform?
Oh, wow. That's pretty broad. Basically, it's companionship for other males of legal age.
All right. And did that involve sexual activities?
Sometimes it does.
Okay. What types of sexual activities, sir?
Oh, just about anything under the sun. I mean, I don't know exactly how much the court wants me to go into detail, but...
okay, well, it would be...
What just wants you to answer the question?
That's my answer.
Just about anything under the sun?
Yes, ma'am.
A person who you now know was Michael Peterson back in August of 2001?
I can't say...
As best you can remember?
As best I can remember, yes, ma'am.
Now, you all contacted each other back and forth approximately how many times? By way of the computer?
I'm guessing about 20 different email correspondences by either myself or this person, back and forth.
Okay, now you've mentioned that at least one of the initial purpose was getting to know each other a little bit better. Did the emails turn out to be something a little bit different than that? Or did you all discuss anything other than just trying to get to know each other?
I mean, as far as I can, without directly looking at them, as far as I can recall, it was basically the same as many other clients who would contact me. They'd want to get to know me about my life, about, just they want to be safe, so they want to get to know me to make sure that I'm a straight guy.
Okay, well, what does that mean?
Well, I'm not a gangster, someone who's going to rob them. I'm a clean-cut professional who's going to have they're going to have a good time with.
All right, now, a lot of the emails, did they deal with that type of thing? Just casually getting to know each other?
Yes, ma'am.
According to the male escort that Michael had been in communication with, he and Michael were supposed to meet up for sex 3 months before Kathleen died, but that he hadn't shown up.
Did you all actually discuss what you were going to do when you were to get together on September 5th of 2001?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you all planning on doing?
Having sex.
What type of sex, sir? You know?
Well, can I say it? I guess anal sex.
Okay. Did you get together with him on September 5th, 2001?
No, ma'am.
Well, what happened?
I had made this appointment on September 5th at around 9 o'clock that night. That's when it was supposed to happen. The only reason I was coming up to Durham was because I was leaving on a flight the next morning to Palm Springs on September 6th.
From Raleigh-Durham Airport?
Yes, ma'am. That's why I would be close to his residence. When I had a very long day, and when I got up there that night, I just said, you know what, I'll talk to him when I come back. I'm just tired, and I want to go to Palm Springs, so I didn't go.
So you just simply didn't contact him back at all?
I do not think I contacted him that night. I have found out that I contacted him about 25 days later to apologize for not showing up.
Well, after you contacted him to apologize to him for not showing up, did you have further communication with him?
No, ma'am.
The prosecution also claimed that the supposed murder weapon was a custom-made fireplace poker, which during the investigation had been missing from the fireplace. Basically, they came up with this because investigators hadn't found the blowpoke that had been seen in family photos. Prosecutors alleged that Michael had taken it out of the house after he bludgeoned Kathleen with it. The most damning evidence, though, was the blood spray on those walls. According to the state's blood pattern expert, Dwayne Deaver, based on the blood spatter, it could only be murder. Deaver explained that the blood pattern high up on the walls and on the inside of Michael's shorts, told a story that he'd beaten his wife to death.
Step 17, I placed a foot up on step number 16 and then impacted that cord. In other words, I took a rod, as I remember, I put a leg up like that, and I struck I struck the source of blood there.
What process did you go through to make decisions about how to position yourself with those pants on so that you would get that result?
Well, I had placed the pants that were provided to me in this case, identified as coming from Michael Peterson. I had placed those pants on myself to what we call modeling to determine what kinds of positions you could be in for bloodstains to strike those pants. And I had gone through numerous positions that would allow the inside of the pants on the left part of the right leg to be open in order for bloodstain to strike it. It was my opinion that that only a few ways could provide that. Basically, the leg would have to be forward, the knee bent, allowing the leg to open to the inside, and place it in a position that blood spatter from forward and down would be able to come up in there and to go on the inside of the pant leg. Another position to accomplish that would be if the leg were up onto a step. And so what I did was simply choose one of those manners to do that. In this case, step up on one of the steps in the stairwell itself, strike a source of blood to see if blood spatter would come in contact with the pants in that manner.
One of Elizabeth Ratliff's friends testified that she cleaned blood off the walls and floor after her death.
Michael was really in charge of handling information for almost all of us. Michael was telling us that this accident had happened and that she had fallen down the steps and what was taking place. And he also handled most of the situation with the medical people, the German police people. Did he do most of the talking with almost everyone there?
Object to leading. Overall.
You may answer. So I answer. You may.
Yes.
My recollection is that Michael was handling most of the conversation with most of the people at that time.
Michael didn't testify, but the defense argued that Kathleen's death was a tragic accident, that Michael was being railroaded for his lifestyle choices and his critique of the police in his column. And as far as the former, the defense claimed that Kathleen knew about and accepted Michael's bisexuality, and that there was zero proof that Kathleen had stumbled on the photos and email exchanges on Michael's computer that night. And in a shocking turn of events, the defense was able to produce the missing blowpoke. Apparently, Michael's son had found it in the garage, and that it had been there all along, and investigators missed it. The defense argued that Deaver's forensic tests weren't accurate. Their own forensic expert refuted the state's blood spatter evidence, saying that the spray came from Kathleen being alive and moving around gasping for air, that if she had truly been bludgeoned to death with a metal object, she'd have a skull fracture and brain injury. But she didn't. In October of 2003, after one of the longest trials in North Carolina history, a jury found Michael Peterson guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life without parole. Michael never wavered that he was innocent, and he filed multiple appeals, which all failed. But several years after his conviction, a new theory began to take shape, that Kathleen hadn't died from a slip and fall, but rather, that night when Michael was asleep outside by the pool, she'd been viciously attacked by an owl. Now, this alternate theory was developed by a neighbor who was not involved in the case. But after seeing Kathleen's autopsy photos, he approached the police and said that based on her wounds, it was possible that she could have been attacked by an owl that night. If you'll recall, Kathleen had spent the day putting up Christmas decorations, which included cut-out reindeers, which were positioned in the yard by a tree. The neighbor posited that night before Kathleen went to bed, she went out front to check on her display by the trees, and that an owl flew down and attacked her head, which would account for the deep wounds on her head from the talons. It was then that a stunned, bleeding, and discombobulated Kathleen swiped her hand on the front door, smearing blood as she struggled into the house. And that would account for the drops of blood on the front walkway. The neighbor also went through the evidence list related to the case, and he found something. A mention of an owl feather that had been found at the crime scene. Under a microscope, they analyzed the feather. As it turned out, it was actually 2 owl feathers, which were clutched in Kathleen's hand, along with strands of her hair, as if she had touched her head after being attacked by the owl. But this new theory didn't go anywhere. However, in 2010, a series of newspaper articles were published that alleged misconduct in the State Bureau of Investigations in North Carolina. These articles led to an investigation, and an expert at the center of the misconduct allegations was Dwayne Deaver, the blood spatter expert who testified at Michael Peterson's trial. Deaver was ultimately fired from the SBI for giving misleading and deliberately false testimony about bloodstain evidence, which meant after 8 years behind bars, Michael Peterson was granted a new trial, and at 68, he was released on a $300,000 bond in December of 2011.
I have waited over 8 years. 2,988 days, as a matter of fact, and I counted, for an opportunity to have a retrial so that I can vindicate myself and prove my innocence in a fair trial this time.
But a new trial never materialized. Instead, Michael took an Alford plea, and the murder charge was reduced to voluntary manslaughter in the spring of 2017. Now, an Alford plea is essentially you're not admitting you're guilty, but you are acknowledging that there's enough evidence to likely result in a guilty verdict. Michael was sentenced to time served.
Court does find that he has served his time and he is free to go.
Here's Michael Peterson.
It has been the most difficult thing I've ever done. Ever. Am I going to put my life and my freedom in the hands of the Durham police, the district attorney? Look what they did the first time. There is no closure. This is not an end.
Here's Kathleen's sister, Candace, who tells Michael exactly what she thinks after he takes that Alford plea.
Michael Peterson, the words Alford plea, they're meaningless. Alford Schmalford means nothing. Guilt. An innocent man does not plead guilty. Mr. Peterson pled guilty today.
Up next, Criminal Mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I discuss the case in more detail. And check out our Criminal Mischief YouTube channel at EVO Creative. That's EVIOcreative.com. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production. Recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself. Music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Ossorio, your writer and host.